as evidences of human achievement. SubhanAllah. Allahu ta'ala alam. Allah knows best. However, when Spain was taken from us, it was truly a loss to humanity. When Spain was taken and the Muslims were thrown out of Spain, truly it was not just a loss to Islam, but it was a loss to humanity. And Muslims and humanity itself lost one of its greatest assets, and these were the Muslims. And this is what the world has lost by the downfall of Muslims. They have lost a lot of honor, they have lost knowledge, they have lost greatness in every single field, they have lost masters in every single field, they have lost a lot of respect. As we will take inshallah in the next lesson, you will see how the world has truly fallen apart after the coming of the Christians into Spain. How, wallahi, when the Christians threw out Muslims in large numbers, and they pillaged Muslims, and they raped 100,000 women, and they killed millions of Muslimin. How, when they actually did that, and they actually banished millions of Muslims away from Spain, wallahi, victory was not for anyone except for the Muslims, and defeat was for no one except for the Christians. Because truly, when the Muslims left Spain, Spain ceased to be the leader of the world. Spain ceased to be leaders of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Until the next session, brothers and sisters in Islam, I will start off our talk on the fall of Andalus by quoting to you what many of the historians and how they have described how pitiful was the state of Andalus, how pitiful was the state of the world when Andalus fell. And I will quote to you what this man, Stanley Lane Poole, he writes in the Moors in Spain, and he is actually a very non-biased writer. And so if you want to go back to his book, this is actually quite a fine, non-biased book, and that is Stanley Lane Poole's The Moors in Spain. He writes, with Granada fell all Spain's greatness. For a brief while, indeed, the reflection of the Moorish splendor cast a borrowed light upon the history of the land which it had once warmed with its sunny radiance. The great epoch of Isabella, Charles V, and Philip II, of Columbus, Cortez, and Pizarro shed a last halo about the dying monuments of a mighty state. When followed the abomination of dissolution, the rule of Inquisition, and the blackness of darkness in which Spain has been plunged ever since. In the land where science was once supreme, the Spanish doctors became noted for nothing but their ignorance and incapacity. The arts of Toledo and Almeria faded into insignificance. The land deprived of skillful irrigation of the Moors grew impoverished and neglected. The richest and the most fertile valleys languished and were deserted, and most of the populous cities which had filled every district in Andalusia fell into ruinous decay, and beggars, friars, and bandits took the place of scholars, merchants, and knights. So low fell Spain when she had driven away the Moors. Such is the melancholy of the contrast offered by her history. And also Prescott writes as well in his Philip II of Spain. He writes, the Arab suddenly appeared in Spain like a star which crosses through the air with its lights, spreads its flame on the horizon, and then vanishes rapidly into naught. They appeared in Spain to fill her suddenly with their activity and the fruit of their genius, and endowed her with a glorious glamour which enveloped her from the Pyrenees to Gibraltar, and from the oceans to the Barcelona. But a burning love for liberty and independence, a fickle character disposed of frivolity and merriness, neglect of old virtues, and unfortunate disposition of revolution, provoked always by an inflamed imagination, violent passions and ambitions, a spirit to dominate, and other factors of decay, worked in the course of time to demolish this great edifice raised by men like Tariq, Abdurrahman al-Nasr, Muhammad ibn al-Ahmar, and led the Arabs to internal dissension which sapped their power and pushed them away to the abysses of naught. Millions of Moors quitted Spain carrying their property and arts. The patrimony of a state, what have the Spaniards created in their place? We could say nothing, but an eternal sorrow fills this land, in which the gayest natures breathed before. Indeed, there are some ruined monuments which still look like these gloomy districts, but a real cry resounds from the depths of these monuments and ruins. Honor and glory to the conquered Moor, and decay and misery to the victorious Spaniard. Subhanallah. As well, Dr. Kamen, he writes in the Spanish Inquisition, as a result of his Cardinal Ximen's coercive endeavors, it is reported that on the 18th December 1499, about 3,000 Moors were baptized by him, and a leading mosque in Granada was converted into a church. Converts were encouraged to surrender their Islamic books, several thousand of which were destroyed by Ximenes in a public bonfire. A few rare books on medicine were kept aside for the University of Alcala. Ximenes claimed the Moors had forfeited all their rights under the terms of Granada. They should therefore be given the choice between baptism and expulsion. At Andalus, the principal mosque in which the women and children had taken refuge was blown up with gunpowder. All books in Arabic, especially the Quran, were collected to be burnt. Cardinal Ximenes was reported during his conversion campaign amongst the Granada Moors in 1500 to have burnt in the public square of Virambra over 1,005,000 volumes, including unique works of Moorish culture. SubhanAllah. And these are books which the scholars have written over centuries, being burnt in front of our eyes. And this is how, SubhanAllah, Spain had been destroyed after the coming of the Christians. Brothers and sisters in Islam, what was the reason for the downfall of Spain? What was the reason for the downfall of Spain? The reason for the downfall of Muslims in Spain was, of course, for a number of reasons. The first of which was that in the people there was true lack of iman. People had become fascinated with beauty, with this worldly life, and they were into luxury in a way that you just cannot even describe. They were into luxury more than we are into luxury, subhanallah. They were into big palaces, they were the leaders of the world, and so they had this pride in their heart, and they were into luxury like you cannot describe. They used to write poems about how beautiful the Spaniard women were at that time, about red hair and green eyes, and this is what filled their books, them fantasizing about beautiful women. And this is, subhanAllah, a sign of how they were so taken away from the women of this world, taken away from the women of the hereafter to the women of this world, subhanAllah. Truly, the level of iman in their hearts had truly declined. No more was a prayer a means of peace, attaining peace. Rather the prayer was a burden upon them. It was a cultural practice that they were doing. No more was gaining Islamic knowledge a obligation. Rather it was what the philosophers would at that time in Andalus would call a waste of time, because true knowledge was the knowledge of philosophy that the philosophers were philosophizing at that time. Also, of course, brothers and sisters in Islam, it was truly the fact that there was a lot of cowards in Andalus. Many of the kings of Andalus were true cowards. They were just cowardice, and there is no other word that you can use to describe them. They were in the face of danger they would leave. In the face of danger they would give up their empire. In the face of danger they would just make pacts with the Christians, and the Christians were completely treacherous in the way that they would look after their pacts. And so people were cowards, were true cowards. On top of that, brothers and sisters in Islam, people were traitors as well to Muslims. A Muslim would help a disbeliever over his Muslim brother, something which the ulama of Islam have complete consensus that it is complete kufr. To help to help a disbeliever over a Muslim and to take over their lands and to rape their women, and to help the disbelievers to take Muslim women as their concubines and slaves. It's unbelievable. This is all what happened in Spain. It is truly a tragic history, a journey into a very, very tragic history, how these traitors, these Muslim rulers at that time were such traitors of Muslimin that they would actually help Christians, crusaders who they knew were treacherous to their pacts, who they knew would automatically break their pacts. All why? Because they just couldn't be bothered trying to fight them. They just couldn't be bothered. They would rather let the disbelievers fight their brothers and help them with whatever they required. And because they were so much into the dunya, as we will come to, subhanallah, one of the greatest and one of the most treacherous rulers of Spain was Ibn al-Ahmar. And let us take the history of Spain from 250 years before its fall.